forgot to start the recording earlier.
Okay. Well, I'll backtrack a
So
little.
sorry, everyone.
No problem. The part of Zoom issues. Anyway, my name is Tracy Ashby, and I am an instruction librarian at McNeese State University. I'm happy to see some faces that I recognize today and some new people that I have not. So today I'm going to talk to you about crafting elevator pitches and advocating library services to your students and faculty. So just a quick overview of the presentation of what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to just tell you what an elevator pitch is, which I'm sure you're already familiar with the term. Then we're going to look at the benefits of a prepared speech or prepared speeches. Then we will break down the elements that make up a great pitch. And finally, with our interactive part of COILed that we like to do, we're going to break you out into groups and have you collaborate with each other to write your own. And also, I meant to mention this in the beginning, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. Holly, Lisa, and Ashley are all monitoring that for me. All right. So elevator pitches. So what is it? Elevator pitches are brief and highly focused speeches designed to spark interest and persuade a particular audience. The name, of course, comes from the idea that a speech can be delivered in a very short period of time, like in an elevator ride, between 20 to 60 seconds, or 2 or 3 sentences. So you may have also heard this term referred to as an elevator statement or an elevator speech, but they all mean the same thing. So while many people and individuals use elevator pitches to further their own career, in the library, having a prepared pitch is a great way to promote your library's services to both your faculty and staff. And staff and students. The key is to engage them in a memorable and effective way that sparks a further conversation. And Lisa Grimes, our webmaster in COIL, prepared a short video that really sums up elevator pitches in a great way. So we're going to watch that now, and please let me know if you can't hear and I can turn it up.
Hi, my name is Lisa Grimes, and I'm the Student Success Librarian at the University of Tulsa. Today, we're going to talk about elevator pitches designed for a library. Sometimes you might hear it called elevator speech. There's a lot of different terms for it. It's basically a 20 to 30 second pitch that you have queued up kind of in the back of your head. So if you're at a fundraising event, if you're networking, if you run into a student or a professor that maybe you want to talk to, encourage them to come use library resources, but use it in bullet points. Because if you try to memorize a speech, sometimes it comes across not quite so naturally. Make sure it's something that excites you, because if you're talking like this, then the person you're talking to is completely zoned out. They don't, it doesn't keep their attention. So make sure your bullet points are something that really excites you, make you happy, and get that emotional side of you going in a good way. And so making sure that you have also something in mind for those yes answers, those no answers, and those maybe or a little bit answers. Because if you think through everything, as best as you can, that way when you do get presented with something that would have otherwise stumped you, you're already prepared. Because you never know when you're going to run into a student or professor or have an opportunity to talk to somebody about, oh my gosh, check this out. So perfect opportunity to talk to a student. So hi, I'm Lisa Grimes. I'm the Student Success Librarian here at TU. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Have you had a chance to look at our online databases or resources yet?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, this is perfect timing then, because we have almost 600 databases to choose from and several other library resources. And I know trying to get your research done can be a little difficult, especially when you're used to going, hey Google or hey Siri. But so I can totally help out with that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. We can get together next week. Perfect. Then I'll give you a call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here's my card. Have a great one. So perfect example. You never know when you have that split second to like, oh, wait a minute, this would be a perfect time for that elevator pitch. And you don't want to get caught going, man, I wish I had one, because then you've missed that perfect opportunity. So again, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it upbeat and friendly, and you'll make more connections than you ever thought you could. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.
All right, thank you, Lisa, for making that. And I think that is a great summary of the value of an elevator pitch. And so next, let me go back to there we go. I just want to do a quick poll, and you can type your answers into the chat if you want, just to see if you currently have an elevator pitch or something short and sweet that you like to present to your faculty or students. So if you want to put an answer in the chat, I'll give a moment or two. Sort of. Nothing memorized. All right. Yeah. Okay, great. So we have a little mixed review, nothing, I guess labeled as an elevator pitch, but probably some of you have stuff that you do like to share with faculty and students. So as librarians, we typically interact with an abundance of students and faculty on any given day. And as Lisa mentioned in the video, whether you're a seasoned librarian or new into the field, having a short speech on hand can greatly enhance your outreach in faculty and students. While many of course are not in person currently right now due to COVID, it's more important than ever to have a short pitch ready that you can send in an email to faculty or that you can share with students if you're doing virtual online sessions. So next, I'd want to take a look at just a few scenarios for you just to see your reactions to these. Maybe. There we go. So how would you respond to the following if, for example, an incoming freshman states or asks, why would I need to use library for my research when I can find everything I need on Google? Or maybe a history professor comments, well, students are in college now. They should know how to use a library database. And finally, you may have a student who is relying solely on social media and to get all of their news. So think about how you would really respond to that in real time. I mean, you probably have a lot of things that you'd want to say. You may get very emotional. You may become defensive. Like, for example, you may have a list of reasons why relying on Google for your research paper is probably not the best idea. And for that history professor, maybe you'd want to go out a spiel and say, well, a lot of students don't interact with a library until they get into college, right? And lastly, of course, the student on social media, I really hope the student is stopping and checking their sources, right? So you really need to think about how you would respond to this and realize that having an elevator pitch may help you to quickly respond to these in a memorable sort of way. So this is why having a speech can greatly enhance your interaction. So you never know when you're going to get an opportunity to advocate for library services. So here are just a few of the benefits of having a prepared speech. And there are many more, but some include the fact that it's useful for anyone, anywhere, and anytime. Remember that you never know when you may have an opportunity to advocate for your services. They are effective and memorable because they're short and sweet. You can get to the point quickly, and it's more memorable to the person that you are telling the information to. And finally, it provides you an opportunity to reflect. So crafting your own elevator pitches really makes you think about your own position and how your position affects your work with faculty and how it benefits students. So you may want to write these steps down or take a picture of them, because this is what you're going to kind of use when we do our breakout groups session in a minute to create your own. But now that we know some of the benefits, we're going to take a little deeper look into some of these steps. So Deborah Cashel, an online instructor, developed these 5 steps to create an effective and simple elevator speech. So first, step 1, you want to identify the ask. So when you're drafting a speech, start with a vision. So write down what you ultimately are wanting the students or faculty to take away from what you're telling them. A good pitch, remember, is simple but memorable. So step 2, know your audience. So who is this pitch for? Is it for a student or is it for a faculty member? Different people have different needs. It's a good idea to have multiple elevator pitches on hand, depending on what your focus is, what your ask is, and who you're pitching it to. So for example, you probably would not tell an incoming freshman who wanted to know more about library databases on the benefits of library instruction and how it contributes to student success rates. You'd probably, be saying that to a faculty member to get them to add instruction in their class. So this is just one thing to keep in mind when you start writing these, is know who you're writing for. Step 3 is to be concise and be compelling. So keep it brief and make it personal. Remember that this is your pitch. Use active words to try and engage your students or your faculty, but let your personality shine through and your confidence shine through, because when you sound confident and engaging, students and faculty are more willing to listen. And step 4, put students first. Remember that everything that we do in the library is for the benefit of the student. So when you keep the elevator pitch crafted around the student, it really helps you to narrow down the focus of your pitch. And then finally, step 5 is to follow up. Remember that an elevator pitch is meant to spark a conversation. It's not meant to be something that is going to just a one-shot thing. It's a beginning point. So when you pitch that to a faculty member or to a student, you want to make sure to follow up with them if they have any questions, and then follow up at a later time. So like Lisa did in her video where she handed a business card, maybe keep business cards. I mean, right now and during COVID, we may not have that one-on-one interaction, but make sure to follow up through email or any way so that you continue to make that outreach to your audience. All right. And so now that we have the building blocks to compose an effective speech, now is your opportunity to create your own. Holly is going to be breaking up our rooms into groups, but before we do that, I want to make sure that we don't have any questions. I haven't looked at the chat, so let's see.
No specific questions yet.
Okay, great. And I can always back up to this slide right here. And whenever you're ready, Holly, to break out our groups, I think we're ready to do that, if we have no other questions.
What are
Okay.
doing in
Sorry. Can you repeat your question? Sorry.
what are we doing in our groups?
So you are going to be just working together. I mean, just talk amongst yourself. You're going to just do write a draft elevator pitch, but you're going to, use your colleagues to help you, talk amongst yourselves to create your own.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, yes, so I'm gonna go ahead and just push everybody into breakout rooms. There'll be 3 to 4 people in each room. We encourage you to use the tools that you'll have available. There's a whiteboard you guys can draw on, the chat box, your mics, your cameras, etc. We'll give you we'll say about 15 minutes, and then I'll pull you back in. You'll get like a 1-minute warning before you automatically get pulled back into the main room. So I'm gonna go ahead and send everybody to rooms now. Okay, I think we have everybody back now. So we'd just like to invite you to share some of the discussion that you had with your groups, or if you came up with your elevator pitch and you want to practice it, by all means. But let's hear some of the conversations that were going on in your individual groups.
Hi, Holly.
Hi, Kalantha.
Hi. Well, I can go first. We had a wonderful time talking through it. Tracy and Kathy and I really dominated the whole one the whole time.
I am so surprised.
I know, right? But they were really, really helpful. So I was talking about kind of the fact that we've gone to only offering virtual, like information literacy instruction opportunities for the fall, and how I've been getting pushback from just specific areas of study or specific instructors who are maybe older and they're just refusing to change the way that they've been teaching for years and years and years. And so I wanted their ladies' help creating something that would be a little bit more positive, as opposed to me just being like, oh my gosh, which is generally my state of being when those conversations happen. So we came up, well, really they came up with it, and then I just applauded them all the way. Was the statement of, we offer the opportunity to be innovative and flexible through engaging online learning opportunities. So I thought that was great, and I applaud both of them. So thank you.
That is really great, and I'm glad I didn't think about having the opportunity to talk about our online instruction specifically during this current moment. So that's awesome. Anybody else like to share what was going on in their groups? And if you don't want to talk on your mic, you're welcome to paste something in the chat, and I'm happy to read it out if you would prefer to do it that way.
I could share. In our group, Marianne had a very good point, which was that a lot of times it should be less of a pitch and more of a conversation, which I know, I think, I forget who it was that mentioned above. Maybe it was Tom. I can't remember. I apologize. It was Adam. Oh, okay.
Adam, yeah.
To make it more about building rapport with somebody. And so that's what we talked about, was we kind of started like with crafting some opening things and letting them talk, and then follow-up questions in case that's not covered in what they say, so you can just keep the conversation flowing.
Great, thank you.
I guess I can go. Hello, my group was Patrick, Michelle, and Ona. If you were in my group, give the thumbs up. So we talked mostly about how really we have 2 different sets of elevator speeches, because audience is important, and so whether you're talking to a student or you're talking to a faculty member, we had mentioned that the student interactions tend to be more like conversations, and tend to sort of start along that way, whereas the faculty elevator pitches tend to be more or less tailored around a very specific faculty need at that moment. Is a good way to describe what we were talking about. Like, a faculty person will mention something, and then you'll bring up a service, especially if you have new services that are rotating in. We'll bring up a new service to them, follow up with an email. So they tend to be a little more along those lines. And so that's kind of where we were at in our discussion.
Okay, thank you, Adam. There's also, I saw a comment in the chat. Amanda said she's been thinking about how these pitches might change if we mainly have to interact via email, which is something to consider as well. As we said before, we're probably not going to be stuck in an elevator with anyone anytime soon. So how is this going to change when we change the mode of how we're interacting with the people we're talking to? And then Michelle popped in, engaging with faculty is about identifying pain points and offering solutions. I really like that, identifying the pain points. Would anybody else like to share what their groups talked about or follow up on anything that someone else mentioned?
I'll go.
Empress, you're raising your hand?
Yeah, I'll go. So I was in a group with Jennifer and Tom, and we discussed how the elevator, we had a long discussion about a lot of things. We were talking mostly about faculty because we will be approaching faculty and demanding some time from them, which they sometimes can be difficult on giving up. So we talked about things like sliding in the fact that we do have online services, because depending on what's happening with the library building, you know, sometimes we hear things like, well, the library is closed. And so trying to get people to understand that the library is open, like the building might be closed, but we still have our services for you. So we don't say we're closed. And so, you know, sliding in the fact that we do have the online services, and also listing out what we could talk to them about, and then saying, you know, we can talk to you for, you know, like I can talk about X, Y, and Z for 15 minutes, and then I'll take questions for 5. So, you know, being a little specific, and then ending it with, you know, like I'll send you a calendar invite and we can talk more by Zoom or on the phone or email, you know, whatever, in order to set it up. And that way you're getting it set up before they, you know, before they escape. And Jennifer and Tom, did you want to add anything on to that?
No, like you said, before they escape, you have to hold their attention and point out the benefits of our online support that is still there. You know, the library is just the building.
Yes, exactly. And just being like respectful of their time for sure, and giving them a finite time frame. Like I'm not going to take the whole class, and realistically saying I'm going to cover this, this, and this. It'll be 15 minutes. And then students are more than welcome to ask questions, but being respectful of faculty's time because it's so limited. It seems like the minutes are just shorter nowadays, even more.
Tom, it looks like you have a little elevator speech behind you on the wall. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah, that is a poster, in a life-size poster, and also a image that I can send out for my open workshops with that kind of an elevator pitch. The marketing department helped design this.
Great.
Yeah, so there's been some conversation in the chat around how to pitch an email and be careful of tone and not having facial expressions. And Lisa, you said something interesting. You said you try to be very careful with wording and add emojis. Do you want to expand on how you are careful with your wording and your emojis in your email messaging?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that, you know, when I read things from people, sometimes I'll take it the wrong way. And then I have to think, wait a minute, is that just me or is that really what they're saying? And so I tend to add emojis, even if it's not the colorful ones, behind certain sentences that might be taken a little bit. I tend to be very upbeat and very happy and very smiley, but somebody who doesn't know me, especially if it's a professor I'm reaching out to, they don't understand my tone. And so that's when I try to put the happy face emoji behind something, or like a winky face emoji behind like a sentence as I'm doing my typing. That way, if they read it the wrong way, they get to the emoji and go, oh, okay, that's how she meant that. And so that way it just keeps things upbeat. And I find that if I add the little colorful things into there, or the little graphics, it keeps their attention a little longer, because then that draws their attention to the rest of the email. So sometimes I'll wait until closer to the end of the email to start adding the emojis, just to draw their attention all the way to the bottom if it's a longer email too.
Thanks.
My group was Ashley and Douglas and Megan. And Ashley had something really, I liked the way what she had said for her first year students. For me, my takeaway was it definitely depends on where you're at. If you're at a booth and you're promoting library services, or if a tour is coming through the library, of course, faculty, and then one for students. So there's a lot of scenarios there. I'm so used to working with visual aids. So if I'm teaching, I've got, the library website up. And so I started to think that if I'm speaking to faculty, we have a LibGuide for our faculty. And so it's not so much about memorizing exactly, but for me in my head, those tabs that are at the top of the LibGuide those are my talking points, that we have e-resources and that we have information literacy instruction, we have OER. So if I'm hitting those tabs, not to expand on every one of them, but just kind of like saying these are the highlights, to me in my visual brain, that's what I'm saying to somebody as my elevator speech. So it kind of depends on my audience, but that can be my fallback to remember what to say. But Ashley, tell them what you tell your first year students.
Part of our branding at RSU is we really focus on saving them time and money, and especially with my position being the first year experience and distance learning, I'm the personal librarian of our first years, so any interaction I have with them, I really try and frame it that way. I'm literally here for you for your entire first year. Of course, the rest of the team is available as well, but hopefully it gives them a pinpoint, some kind of point of contact to ask any questions that they may not feel comfortable asking or something like that.
Our group really loved that, here to save you time and money. Like that's a big selling point for college students.
Yep. They might listen to that.
Parents like it too. When they come around and do tours, she and I are both at RSU, and parents like to hear that they can save, hundreds of dollars on textbooks, or, they also like to hear about our research appointments because they're, free and they're 100% customization. I think that's another important factor for both groups, is that our services can be extremely customized, totally personalized, knowing that they can both sets have experiences to get the specific exact thing that they need, not just an overabundance of information. Yeah.
I just saw Christina popped in the chat, said she loves when I do that too, because I work with a lot of first year students, that I tell them, this is my job, let me help you. And I do that a lot with students. I'll be like, this is literally why I became a librarian, is so that you will ask me questions and I will help you answer them. To try to get, especially the first year students, past some of that library anxiety or that thought of, everybody else knows how to do this. I don't want to ask this question because I feel like I should know. And I'm like, don't worry, you're not the first person to ask. You won't be the last person to ask. So yeah, I do that as well. So that's a really great idea.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share?
Can I ask a question about lending credibility? I used to work in admissions, and one of the big things that they talk to you about in training is, especially if you're introducing students or you're doing a tour, introducing them to new services or new people. Like in my case, I'm not the first year experienced librarian, but I do a lot of the tours. I meet up with a lot of the tours that come through the library. So first establishing like who I am and how important, what I can do for them, and then like lending that credibility to like Ashley, because like, oh great, yeah, you're interested in this, I'll be working with you in your upper level courses, but did you know there is this person who is just for you. She works specifically with you and offers these services. And then, or if you're introducing another service, like I'll talk about interlibrary loan, and then lending the credibility I've established on one-on-one with myself to, Kelly, our interlibrary loan guy, and letting them know he does incredible work. Here's his direct information. He sits right here. So I guess I don't know, in elevator pitches, especially if you've already established a rapport or you're trying to get across some new service, lending credibility, your credibility is important. And it doesn't get talked about as much, but in sales, it's a big thing. And we are selling ourselves to some extent. Well, not to some extent. I mean, we really are. It's a huge part of a librarianship. So anyway, I just thought I would see what you guys thought about that, or see if, you know, you found that to be important.
It absolutely is important. We have a big ILL staff, program here as well. And we also have several other librarians that jump in and help out. So, when I'm doing something with my first year students, I will definitely take some time to point out who is going to be useful for them, who else they can reach out to. I really push the ILL, especially with the upper levels, juniors, seniors, graduate students, because I know that they don't even know what that is. And so I'll even walk them through how to set up their account really quick, because it's a different account for ILL than it is for their actual library account. But knowing that they have that one person, and I'll use their first names with it, that way it's more of a personal touch. So that really seems to help. And then when they do come across that, then it's something they can go, oh yeah, I remember she said, and then it's not like a cold meeting kind of thing. Yes. And then something else that we talked about in the group I was with was, having different elevator pitches for different purposes. So staff, professors, graduate students that are actually TAs versus maybe a freshman student versus like an older student or we talked about non-traditional students, and maybe your approach is a little bit different with them. And then with professors, I mentioned that I will send polls out or surveys out after I've done a class with like a whole group of like the incoming freshman English classes, and find out maybe at the end of the semester, because we do an embedded librarian program here, and it's just kind of getting off the ground. We really got it going last year. And so I would ask them, how was the research, or how was the output from the students different from the previous years you've had without the embedded librarian program? Was the quality of work better? And I would get percentages and some data from that. And then that enabled me to go to the professors that hadn't jumped in yet and go, hey, I just talked to, some professors, and I found out that their grades increased by like 25%, or more students are getting A's now on their projects than before. And so when I start using data with them, they're like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden I've got that hook, because they're very data research driven. And so if I can use that to my advantage to hook them into the program and be able to point out how it's improved in other classes and how students' engagement has increased, and what their citations and their resources have improved, then that really does get their attention.
Yeah, on Lisa's comment, I certainly agree with that. I think there's a unique element that's also in there of what it means to teach, is that we all try to put on this persona that it's not difficult, that we're all really good at it, and we're all, we never want to let that little bit that show, this is difficult at times, and there are challenges that are there. And from the librarian standpoint, to try to let that be a part of the conversation, that, hey, here's some things that we've seen in other classes that have been challenging. It's all okay to go through this. We're all still apologizing for our first year being teachers, so it's cool, right? And here are some things that we can help support you in some of those things that you have found. And that really, I think, tailors into what you were mentioning, Lisa, about what did you see growth-wise from the years before? What was it that you feel attributed to that? And then how can we continue to fuel that and support you?
Yes, it's been very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have a few minutes if anybody has a final comment or something they want to share, and then we'll take a break. So any final thoughts on elevator pitches? Okay, so we're going to take a 15-minute break while we get the lightning talk presenters set up. So I will go ahead and put a timer on the screen so that everybody can see that. But when we come back, we'll hear from our lightning talk people. Feel free to add more comments or thoughts in the chat while we're on our break if you think of something that you wanted to share that we didn't have time for. So I'll see you all in a little bit. Okay, welcome back. I hope everybody had a nice little break from staring, hopefully a break from staring at your screen all day. We're gonna jump into our lightning talks, and today we have 3 people sharing some instruction that they've done, focusing on, having those shorter times in the classroom. So we're gonna hear from Marla Lobley, Calantha Tillotson, and Tom Thorish. So we're gonna start with Marla. Take it away.
All right, I will share my screen. Has anyone ever heard of the question formulation technique? Can everyone see that slide that says that? Okay, so this is, oops, there we go. This is from the Right Question Institute, and their website is here. This slide is directly from their website. They have a lot of great resources about how to implement QFT, both K through 12, and then some in college. But as soon as I saw this, I thought, wow, this is great for students who need to come up with a topic. So you start off by presenting the question focus, which is just a statement that students are going to ask questions about. So the statement might be something like, families are the basic unit of society. Or it might even be one of the frames from the framework. And you could reword it. So you might say scholarship is a conversation, and then see what questions students have from that. And the rules are, I usually let them ask questions for 2 to 3 minutes, but the rules are to ask as many questions as you can. You don't stop to discuss or judge or answer any of the questions. You record them exactly as stated, and then if someone makes a statement, you change it into a question. And then you look at your list of questions. I should note that if students kind of have trouble getting started asking questions, you can say, okay, questions begin with who, what, when, where, why, how. And you might throw out an example question like, why is scholarship a conversation? Or how is scholarship a conversation? And then that can get them started asking questions. And it's really amazing what questions they come up with, especially after a lot have already been asked and they're really digging for more. So then this next step seemed kind of odd to me, but this is when I really saw the most light bulbs go off for students. So you go through, you talk about what is a closed-ended question and what's an open-ended question. And then you go through each question, and as a group, you change the closed questions to open questions and the open questions to closed questions. And I know that sounds odd, but try it out with a couple of people sometime. And for the students, that's when it really clicked, and they could then tell me what made a good research question. Because sometimes closed questions are fine for research, but usually not. Usually you want an open-ended question, and they immediately knew that. So then in the 4th step, we just talk about what would make the best research question, and we also connect it to how all the questions work together to form a conversation about the topic. So I usually do this in 10 or 15 minutes, and by the end of the session, I leave and the students want more, which I feel is a goal. If you're doing it, only have 10 to 15 minutes that you leave and they want more. Because these are questions they came up with themselves, and so now they want to answer them, and they're like, oh, I've got to talk to her. So that is the lesson plan. And I guess if you have questions, we will go over those after Calantha and Tom have gone. And Amanda, in the chat, I can send you these slides. If you want these slides, I can send them to you if you would like. Okay.
If you just send them to me, Marla, I'll put them up with all the uncoiled stuff on the website.
Okay, great.
Well. So, yes, we will do questions. Thank you, Marla. I forgot to say that. We will do questions after all the presenters have gone. So if you want to go ahead and throw it in the chat while they're talking so that you don't forget your question, we will work through them after all the presenters have had a chance to talk. So, okay.
Okay, I'm taking over now. Hi, and I'm glad Marla kept it short and sweet because I'll probably take a few extra minutes. I've given Holly permission to just shut it down, just close the curtain on my screen. So I actually wanted to show you a couple of, let's see if I can just share the whole screen. Okay, hopefully, can everybody see both the Word document and the website? Yes? Okay, good. I'm still learning how these things work. Okay, so I actually wanted to show you this. It's not quite, I'm in the process of getting it down to a bite size, but it started out in collaboration with one of my comp professors, and it was like a full 60 minutes, and now I'm down to 30, and I'm gonna be working to get it down to 15. So I thought it might be helpful for everyone to kind of see the process you have to go through to kind of get it smaller and smaller. So basically, this is what I call Miss Dis info. It's something that we created specifically for the Comp 2 students to kind of increase. Obviously, everybody needs more media and news literacy right now. And so I've been focusing with my comp professors on that the last couple of years. And so actually we created this and we generally start out, and I wanted to give you an example. If you see over on the right-hand side, this is where I actually have embedded, it's one of our course guides. So every class that I teach, I create a course guide for too. And so it's just on their evaluate tab. And then these are the examples of what I'll talk about. So first off, we start by, I give them definitions. So if I open that up, you guys can see, I connect this to a particular type of resource that they have to find. So for example, usually they have to do, especially in Comp 2, annotated bibliography. And so I will talk about how they need to be able to distinguish what's a credible source. And so I start out by giving them the definition of information, misinformation, and disinformation. And then I give them examples of misinformation, disinformation, and information, but I don't tell them which is which. So we start out with just a discussion of, okay, what of this it shows you based on the definitions that I just gave, which category this would reside in. And usually this sparks, this is a really good discussion-based activity. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback from the students on that. However, I know that that's kind of difficult, especially as we're doing virtual only. So I'm also in the process of turning this into, like, it would still work best if you're doing a synchronous Zoom, you know, or something like that type of session so that you can get them into breakout rooms and you can, you know, have these discussions. Otherwise, what I think would be good is turning this into like a tutorial. And I think to keep the time down, so instead of being 30 minutes, what you can do is have these examples and the definitions in a tutorial. So even if you're doing both, so if you're doing a synchronous Zoom activity, you can have them take a tutorial beforehand. And in that tutorial, you can introduce them to these concepts by having those examples and then giving them the opportunity to delineate based on the definitions which of the examples they think are which. And so then what we do is I break them up into groups. So usually I keep them pretty small. I'll have 3 to 4 students per group. And then I always assign the same example to 2 different groups. And so the reason why this is really important is because after I give them, so usually I think they could do it in about 5 minutes, but I usually give them about 10 minutes to have this discussion, but most get it over before then. So this would be another time saver. And so I'll ask them to read through that example and then define and say, you know, which of the categories, is it misinformation, disinformation, or information, and give me 2 reasons why or why not. And so because I gave it to two groups, that means the two groups don't always agree, which means you can have like in real time that conversation about these overlaps, not necessarily between information and misinformation or disinformation, but between disinformation and misinformation. There's like a lot of overlap between those two. And I always choose, like for the original examples, after we do the definitions, I try to keep that pretty neutral. But for the examples I give to the individual class, the individual groups, I like to give them something that's a little bit more controversial. So for example, this first group, group 1 and group 6, they have this example that's about racial appropriation. And then group 2 and 4, they have one about immigration. And then 3 and 5, they have one about the opioid crisis. And so the fact that they're controversial issues means that you spark more of a conversation about bias. And so that, and the discussions themselves are deeper, I think. And you just have to be prepared that you might have to deal with the tension that might arise between students. But I think it's a really good way to start them early in their career at the university, talking about civil discourse. So then usually we have like a full discussion about all of the examples. And again, I kind of let the two groups debate that have the same example. And then if we have time, we'll have a discussion about bias, but I actually think this confirmation bias piece can be its own separate thing too, to kind of get this down to bite size. So really what we do is I just define confirmation bias, have them help me create a definition together. And then I talk about them as a consumer and them as a producer of information. You know, how are you able to recognize the bias that's around you and give specific examples, and then talk about how do we combat that bias within ourselves, but then within excuse me, within the like the information environment around us. And so basically I wanted to give a couple of pieces of advice now that I've done this for about a year now. I've had this in practice. So I think the first thing is carefully choose a topic which will inspire bias. But be prepared to kind of mediate any tensions that might arise through the conversations. The next thing is watch your time closely. So obviously if you're trying to keep this bite size, just make sure those discussion pieces can keep going. And really, honestly, it's hard for me to cut them short, because especially for an activity like this, they really get in depth. And so it's hard for me to say, okay, just take a minute, you know, and we're gonna have to cut this off, excuse me. And then I allow students to disagree with each other. Also allow them to disagree with you. Maybe not so much about what is the information example, but definitely about the misinformation versus disinformation, because that sparks a really good conversation about, you know, clarifying that intention is difficult to apprehend. So once it's reached the situation of being, you know, mis or dis, the only real delineation between those two is about intention. So making sure you have that conversation about the fact that that overlaps. And then also, especially if you're doing the confirmation bias piece, make sure you're comfortable sharing your own confirmation bias. And it doesn't have to be something like really dramatic. It can be about something like, for example, one of the best conversations I've had with them is when I said, I don't like okra, and I'm in Oklahoma. So that sparked a really good conversation. Anyway, okay, I'm done. I'm going away.
Okay, thanks, Kalantha. Tom?
Yes, okay, hi there. I'm also going to share my screen. And there we go. I would like to give you an example of how we try to continue our instruction services at OSU Tulsa Library. On top of the pandemic and everything, we're also in a temporary library location in the old bookstore. So it's already by definition crammed. The staff is sitting suddenly in cubicles and whatnot. I don't have an instruction lab like I have in the main facility. So here was the situation. Everything suddenly went Zoom. We shut down at the first day of spring break. That was March 16, I believe. We got the message, everybody stays home. We had crammed home networks and so on. And then as library staff, we knew, of course, we had to push online content and support. So what did that mean for me with instruction? I had already previously scheduled instruction sessions in late March and still in early May. So I'll give you an example of one particular class. And my question was, how am I going to deliver this? Yeah, I have used Zoom and I've produced some videos and stuff before, but I wasn't exactly fluent with this. So my plan was then that I would combine Zoom sessions, short, 35 to 40 minutes maximum, combine them with online materials and videos that the students can preview and review. I use Canvas Studio screen capturing software. That I had to learn this. This was a very fast and quick learning curve. And obviously this was urgent. We had to deliver something. So I'm giving you a quick example of a class. This was a technical writing class. They have 4 group reports due. And I had plenty more sessions. There was another class for executive PhD students on the Stillwater campus that I support 3 times a year. They come from all over the country. So suddenly it went Zoom. Nobody came to campus. We had to do this online. So in this English typewriting class, we decided we'll do 2 Zoom sessions with 2 groups each. And to prepare the students, I emailed them my usual materials for the suggestions for their group research projects. I emailed them days before the session. I also emailed them, obviously, the Zoom links a few hours before the session started, and I alerted the students. The issue was, how do I get the students to stay tuned in? With our Canvas situation here, our learning platform at OSU, the situation is that library staff does not have full access, admin access to Canvas classes. So how do I get in touch with these students without overloading the faculty member with requests to pass on and forward information and so on? We found a way that the faculty members can add us as non-grading TAs to their classes. So then I have full access to their emails and the groups. That helps me to stay in touch with them. I'm part of the class. I'm embedded. I also sent several instructors a tip sheet on how to add me as a TA so they could do this easily and follow those steps. So the students basically got my handouts and informational materials before the Zoom session. The issue, of course, is will they follow? Will they look at this as I would suggest? There was also another issue. I realized just handouts won't do it. The students will come to these Zoom sessions. They're maybe not fully prepared. I need audiovisual materials. So I really focused on creating short video tutorials in Canvas Studio, really fast learning. I had to learn several things. I had to consider that these videos had to be short, 4 to 5 to 6 minutes, covering a little small aspect of library research, not to get them to tune out and get their eyes glassed over. So I had to keep it focused and specific. It had to be easy to access. So the students would easily just click on a link and then look at these tutorials. I had to learn screen capturing. I had to improve my narrative. First, the recommendation was speak slower. I had to really pace myself and limit this. I learned how to insert pauses in my video where I actually yelled at the microphone, pause. And then there was a break. And then in the editing phase, I have this nice big space that's empty that I can edit out later on. So there were practical applications that I learned in the process. And I also learned how to create a public URL for these videos. And create relevant thumbnails. I'm going to show you an example of what this looks visually. I'm going to go to another screen here. And now this needs to go for the moment. I need to go here. So here's our online support information. And this is what it looks like in Canvas Studio. And notice these are videos that I created. And this is an original video that I just created for a test and uploaded. And it looks ugly. It doesn't have a decent thumbnail or anything. It's not branded. It doesn't tell you what this is about. So I have to learn how to create thumbnails that fit exactly the screen size of these video thumbnails. I had created my own thumbnails for each video, so it has a theme. It has sort of the branding, the OSU branding features, and so on. And then when you click on these hamburgers here for uploaded and edited videos, you will actually create an official public URL that students can access easily. That was my concern. Can they access this? Do they have to sign into Canvas first? No, they don't. It's sort of an OK State branded URL, OK State instructor media, blah, 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 and then some kind of a URL. So that was easy to copy. And then I created for the students relevant tutorial link pages that I sent them also before our sessions. I would tell them, okay, our general links and light guides that are also posted, where I also posted these videos, are available on this link. And then I showed them the short videos that I created. You saw the thumbnails above. I showed them these videos and annotated them briefly. These are hyperlinks, so the students can click on them and view them simply in their browser. No downloading, nothing needed to view those materials. So that was the easy part once I discovered that. And this is what it looks like on a light guide page where I actually posted those same very videos with different categories and so on that the students can also visit and review later on as well. I'm going to switch back to the other window. So, as you can see, I created videos on how to access ebooks in this time of the pandemic, how to find them in our catalog system, how to search databases, how to use a citation manager, all those things. So the new normal for me now for my instruction approach is basically I am going to prepare the students before class time. Even if we go back later on to in-class sessions, I'm going to prepare the students before classes. They get materials, they get tailored handouts for their topics, they get written a quick written summary of the research steps. On top of it, they will have video tutorials to review this process. And then, of course, there's follow-up and screen sharing during the Zoom session to explain specific issues of their project during class. And the interesting discovery that I made was, after a while, I could actually produce videos on demand. There were several students who said, yeah, your handout was very nice, but it helped me also to look at a video that you created to go along with this handout. So I started actually to accept requests for videos. And at this point, I can create a quick video with just a quick voiceover without much editing. I can create this in 20 minutes, create a link, send it to the student, and serve their specific purpose. But mostly I take more time and edit them more carefully with annotations, speech bubbles, highlight areas on the screen, so I can use them later on for different, more general purposes as well. But that was an interesting discovery that, yes, I can now produce this stuff on demand and support the student research process with audiovisual materials. So basically, at this point, our entire staff provides support. We're using Light Answers and SpringShare. I provide instructional handouts and videos before my sessions. I email the students links to sessions. I'm embedded in Canvas so I can reach them. And I also follow up after my Zoom session with the students with individual emails, group emails, and whatnot through Canvas and regular emails. So that's basically my new approach to teaching instruction at this point.
Okay, thank you, Tom, and Kalantha and Marla. So if anybody has questions for our presenters, you can go ahead and type them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand or just turn your mic on and throw your questions out, please do. I went ahead and I'll go ahead and share the one that I put in while Kalantha was talking. And you answered it in the chat, Kalantha, but I'm gonna ask you to say it anyway. And that is, do you have the students do any type of assignment or follow-up after you do the session on your mis and disinformation?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to vocalize again, because I love it. Yes, so actually that was a really good question. And I was gonna say, it's not in its current form, because we had stuff that we had them do before the session, but we didn't necessarily have them do anything afterwards because they were focused on their other research assignment. However, now that I'm thinking about how I'm going to transition this for this next semester into a virtual form, this is kind of the formula that I've come up with. So I'm gonna create a pre-session tutorial that will include, obviously just introducing my face, but then we'll also be focused on giving the definitions of mis, dis, and info, and then also giving those first examples. Then I'm going to, if possible, if they let me, have some kind of synchronous Zoom discussion with just taking a couple minutes to have that discussion with the class itself. And then the follow-up piece would actually be some kind of tutorial, some kind of activity on confirmation bias, because I think those are the really important pieces to kind of meld it all into one.
Excellent, thank you. Marla, there's a question for you in the chat. What do you find is the most challenging part of doing the QFT?
The most challenging part for me was to go into the session not knowing what to expect at all. It really depends on how much feedback you get from the students. So if you want to pilot test it before with maybe some coworkers or some student employees or something, just so you can get some confidence, that might help. But after you do it in one class, especially if you do it in a discipline where you usually have good discussions, then that will help in case you try it on a different discipline that you don't know if the students will contribute or not.
That's, I think, a challenge for a lot of instruction that we do, right? Is not knowing what students will contribute or not. Okay, and Tom, there's a question here for you. Are you able to track how many views or interactions?
I don't have a way to track access to those posted online materials yet, but this is probably something we'll be working on just to track our stuff. There are really good features in SpringShare Live Guides, and I think they have some tracking feature there for sure. I haven't looked at individual usage of the videos of mine, but I know from student feedback that they found them helpful. So hopefully we can connect usage to the ref analytics within SpringShare and get better numbers on actual usage or clicks on these resources.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for our presenters before we break for lunch? Not seeing any in the chat. Okay, so, well, if you have them, we'll be back together this afternoon and you can ask your questions then, hopefully. So what I'm gonna do over the lunch break is I'm gonna pause the recording so you don't have to worry about like if you leave your camera on, which you absolutely don't have to. But the Zoom room is gonna stay open. The recording is gonna be paused. So if you want to continue to kind of chat with people or network or anything over the Zoom, then you are welcome to do that over lunch, but that's completely optional. So we will resume at 1 o'clock where we will start talking about designing short sessions. So hopefully you're all able to take a nice break, grab some lunch. I see your question in the chat. Oh no, I will get to that after lunch, not a problem. And yeah, I'll see you all in just over an hour.
Welcome to the afternoon session. My name is Ashley Bean and I'm the first year experience and distance learning librarian at RSU in Claremore. We're going to talk about bite-sized instruction sessions for this afternoon. I've done a quick kind of a literature review on what is out there, and there's not much written. So if you do have anything, please go write it and publish it for me, please. So I'm going to start to share my screen. All right, hopefully you guys are seeing a slideshow now. Let me know if not. Oh wait, I gotta click share. There we go. All right. So, and actually what I've done with my presentation today is I've incorporated a polling software called Poll Everywhere. Just as an example of some technology that maybe you could use while we're distance like this. We've used this kind of thing in our in-person sessions as well, and it always works really well. So I'm gonna go on to that next screen. All right, so there are a few different ways for you guys to join in on this. If you'd like to bring out your cell phone and start like a text message chat, you'll open up a blank text message and you will text to the number 37607. And that message you'll text is RSU Libraries 500, no spaces. Or if you want to just copy and paste that link up there, that polev.com/RSU Libraries, that should work too. I might be able to drop that in the chat somewhere.
Christina has dropped that in the chat for you. So
wonderful. So
go
the
ahead
first
and
question.
grab that link from the chat.
Thank you, Christina. So with this, you'll just put A, B, C, or D if you're doing a text message, and just text it like a normal text message. And what's cool about this poll everywhere is that it updates in live time. So it's pretty engaging and interactive for the students. There are a lot of different question types. This multiple choice is pretty common. We use one called a word cloud, which can be fun because it shifts and changes and words get bigger as more answers come in. So it's pretty interesting. So yeah, we're getting lots of responses in. A lot of us have our typical instruction session at about 45 minutes. I'd say that's pretty typical for us as well, or at least for me, 30 minutes to 45 is pretty typical. So, and sometimes we can't always get that much time. So we're gonna go into some of those resources and see what we can do about that. So just a couple more seconds on that question. So some of you are already doing typically 15 minutes or less, and that's pretty cool. All right, so let's just start off with what even are we talking about? What is this bite-sized short session? So yeah, typically we want to keep them under 20 minutes. 10 to 15 is kind of ideal. That's well within attention spans and things like that. You generally want to have one goal. You want to focus on one activity, one objective, one outcome, something like that. Keep it focused. You don't want to try and cover too much like we do in a typical one-shot, of course. Mainly you want to be selective and strategic. This isn't something you want to give them an entire tour of everything you can possibly do for them. That's just a different kind of session. You're, of course, introducing yourself or the liaison librarian and the library itself. And there are a lot of different examples out there on what some people do in short sessions. You know, a basic library overview, like I said, is pretty common. It gets your foot in the door. You can also cover maybe a custom LibGuide you created for the subject or the course. That would be a great introduction and show them where to go. You can overview a specific collection, maybe if it is relevant to that department or course. You can go over something specific like interlibrary loan, database searching basics, evaluating sources. There's all kinds of options out there. But the key thing is less is more. All right, so now let's talk about why should we even offer these bite-sized sessions? What are some benefits? So I've broken down some benefits for students, for faculty, and then of course for us in the library. The main thing with students is that it's well within their attention spans, or at least much more within their attention spans than a typical one-shot, that 45 minutes. So it's going to help reduce their burnout and information overload, because we do like to give them too much information. I know I do in a one-shot, just in case they need it. That's just kind of part of our profession. We're also bringing the library to them. Typically, you're not having them go out of their way to come to the library building and get confused in those first weeks of classes or something like that. You're bringing the library to them, so that's less stressful for the student, and it eases library anxiety because it's typically a less formal way to introduce yourself in the library. So for faculty, a lot of the things that are benefits for faculty are benefits for us in the library as well. But first of all, it offers a lot more flexibility for the faculty member. It's easier to say yes to 10 to 15 minutes in their class rather than for a whole class period. It's a great chance to get your foot in the door. Maybe it's a new faculty member or an adjunct you never get the time to see, or maybe someone who's never requested instruction before, but you get a lot of questions from their students. The best thing about this is that the faculty are going to learn as well. They might not realize that there is a need for library instruction Because of course, like we talked about with elevator pitches, they assume they learned this in high school or in previous courses, and we know that's not the case. And they might not know all that we offer. The faculty might not know the services we can provide and the resources and how much we can help their students. So if they learn that, that's a benefit for them as well. And finally, it is a very good answer when you do ask for typical library instruction and they say, I don't have time. Almost anyone can find 10 to 15 minutes to squeeze in a quick speaker. Finally, for the library, like I mentioned, it introduces us in a less formal and more approachable manner. It'll help expand your instruction program. It'll reach those hard to reach faculty members, hopefully, which we'll talk about that soon too. There's going to be a lot less faculty resistance, like I said, when you're asking just to squeeze in 10 to 15 minutes, especially if you're coming to them. They're not going to have to try and guide everyone to the library building that maybe they're not familiar with either. You'll spend a lot less time in class. That sounds bad at first, but hear me out. If you have a small staff, like most of us do, if you have 3 or 4 librarians out doing instruction all across campus, who's back to check out books, to answer questions, to man the reference desk, the circulation desk, whatever services you provide? You got to have bodies in those spots as well. So it can be very helpful to not be spread so thin. Finally, it doesn't require as much tech like we were talking about with the student benefits. It's more within their attention span, so you don't have to rely on technology all the time to keep them engaged. So we're going to do another poll everywhere question. This time it's not fill in the blank, free form. So what are some responses, both positive and negative, that you guys typically get from faculty when you ask for instruction time? Maybe you get, yes, please come to my class. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. But oftentimes we do hear that I don't have time, or, you know, maybe we're not doing research, or they've already learned that. Oh, sure, I'll get back with you. You know they won't. They tell me they already had another librarian in class. Yeah. I'll be out on this day, the babysitter response. I've gotten that one before. They already know everything. Do I have to stay in the room while you're teaching? I've already taught them that. Not really. Excellent. Yeah, and then some positive ones. Yes, take the whole class period. Love to see that. We can do a lot of activities in that amount of time. Yes, I saw a difference in my students' grades last semester. Awesome. When they can see that kind of tangible result like that, they're much more likely to keep coming back. And that's kind of another little goal with these short sessions. It's a foot in the door. Hopefully they will see that, hey, maybe a 30 to 45 minute one shot would be beneficial. Yes, I'm flexible. Yeah, and then no responses in email. That's common too. Crickets. All right, these are excellent. And I should be able to export these poll results and put them in the COILed blog, just so we can all see everyone's ideas at the end as well. All right, just a few more seconds. If you're typing something, just finish up and we will move on. Okay, so next we've kind of touched on it. You got to get the word out or approach these new or hard to reach faculty with the offering of a shorter session. So I've listed some of the main ones I saw in the research and, you know, from my colleagues' experience and myself. Of course, everyone knows about targeted emails. That came up a lot in those questions just now. Everyone gets so much email nowadays. I would not recommend an email unless it is directly to a specific faculty member. Maybe one you've had a rapport built with before or been to their class. There are more physical options, dropping a physical postcard or flyer. In the current situation, that might not be as easy, but maybe a virtual version would work as well. Maybe there's something new happening in the library and an in-person visit, or maybe a phone call in today's day, I'm not sure. But if there's anything new, a new database, maybe checking in to see if they even have any questions, maybe there's a new funding opportunity, anything you can find a reason to go to them is an excellent time to bring up this kind of opportunity for bite-sized instruction. Again, in our normal situation in our libraries, going to lunch is an excellent opportunity, probably the best opportunity. People bond over food. That's just how we are. You can talk about just about anything over lunch. But hey, maybe if you order something in, sit like 6 feet away, maybe that could work. I don't know, lunch over Zoom. I'm not sure, haven't tried it yet, but gotta be innovative. Department meetings, we like to try and reach out to our liaison departments before the semester starts to see if they'll allow us to come present, even for just 2 to 3 minutes over anything new, or update them on maybe a new tool and a database, something like that. That's a great time to plug, hey, we're offering 10, 15-minute sessions, won't take your whole class, we'll come to you, you know. Attending campus events, I know a lot of us are doing virtual events. I'm not sure if that's as easy to talk to as with an in-person event, but it is a possibility. And finally, being on committees, that's a great time to talk with other faculty, other staff across campus, get your name out, get your services out. We try and stick our hands in as many pies as we can generally for that reason. Okay, this is the last poll everywhere question. So how do you guys approach new faculty or maybe those who have never requested instruction before? Do you have like a bullet point, maybe an elevator pitch for that? I know that came up in my small group. Faculty is one of those groups you need to have something on hand. Faculty orientation, that's a good place. We were trying to get in on like faculty development training. We were going to do that in the spring, but then everything, of course, changed. Yeah, find out which classes they are teaching, kind of like finding those pain points and offering support and suggestions. Yep. Oh, that's a good idea. Someone said I give the impression that instruction sessions are something that all faculty let me do. So if everyone else is doing it, maybe you should do it too, you know? That's interesting. Boombox outside their window. I say go for it. What can you harm at this point? That's socially distanced. Focused emails. That's probably our go-to for a while now. And that was interesting too. Having a close relationship with another faculty member and approaching them to see maybe why no one else in that department is asking for instruction. Yeah, let them know I've been working with their students. yeah, that could be an easy way. If you're getting the same kind of question from the same course or same instructor, same assignment, that could be a great way. Like, hey, I'm getting all these questions from your students. I would love to come to your class and clear those up for 10 to 15 minutes. Let them know that they can reach out to me. A welcome back email with video or flyer. Excellent. So that's a ton of awesome ideas. Looks like we're all trying to do our best to get out there. So like I said, there's kind of limited literature on the bite-sized instruction out there, but there are a few good ones. So here are kind of the 4 common things I came across for best practices. Generally, you want to keep it a more informal tone, not so practiced and rehearsed as maybe our one-shots can be sometimes. But you want to be informal and positive. You want to try and break that library anxiety, give them a face, a name, someone to come to with any questions, any issues, or anything like that. Stick to one objective or a limited scope. Like I've mentioned, you don't want to overwhelm them in the 10 to 15 minutes you are given. And ultimately, you do want to drive students toward an action. Maybe that's piquing their curiosity to come to the reference desk or circulation, come check out this new collection, try our new 3D printer, I don't know, some new technology, even if it's just to come make a research appointment if they're confused later. That's a great action to drive them towards. And the last point is kind of iffy. Generally want to bring something physical for them to take away. That's kind of a given, whether that's a flyer or a quick handout with some of the stuff you do cover, or maybe more information that you didn't get to touch on. But however you want to handle that, something that they could take away and remember that you did come and talk to them and they didn't have a fever dream or something. Finally, I found a sample lesson outline that someone did. It was about a 12-minute lesson, just as a basic library overview for a class. I had time for about 3 minutes of questions at the end as well. And first, of course, you'll start out with introducing yourself, introducing you as the liaison librarian or a personal librarian like I do with my first years, however you want to frame that. And in an interesting way, try and explain your role in helping students succeed. I mentioned earlier, I tell them that was like our one goal going to library school and paying money for this degree is to help them succeed and do well. Next, you might move into the quick overview of libraries and academic libraries in general. Orient them to the basic services, the classic interlibrary loan. Just because we don't have it doesn't mean you can't have it or you have to buy it. We'll get it for you. Give them a quick look at the library website. Where's your search box, maybe resource guides, that kind of thing. You want to point them where to start with research. You don't have to do a big go through every single step of the research process, but maybe just a demo search, show them what keywords are and that you shouldn't type a whole sentence anywhere, even though if Google will answer you. Yeah, give them some quick tips maybe. And finally, how to get help. Where do they go? Who do they go to? Do you have a chat service? Do you have a text service? Those kind of things, a prominent email to contact, all of that stuff would be great to have, and maybe have that on a handout or something for them. And that's all I have for that. There are the 2 that I found that actually talked about bite-sized instruction in their own ways. Yeah, not a lot out there. So if you guys want to publish, do it.
Well, thanks, Ashley. Does anybody have questions before I explain how the breakout rooms are going to work for this afternoon? Okay.
Oh, there are some in chat right now. So Ona asked, are you thinking of in-person sessions in class or remote? I guess it could work for both. Ideally, I was thinking in person. But of course, I'm definitely switching my thoughts to synchronous instruction for this, not so much asynchronous, because that's more controllable with short videos like Tom was talking in his lightning talk. So right now we are focusing on virtual only. Yeah, Michelle answered that. All right, so yeah, that's all the questions for now.
Okay. So what's going to happen in your breakout rooms, you're going to go back in with the same people that you were with earlier. And what I'm going to do is once you're in those rooms, I'm going to pop in and give you a link to a Google Doc. And in that Google Doc will be a scenario of something that an instructor could ask you for. And then with your group, you will be deciding how you will react to that, or designing the instruction for it, or however your group decides to proceed following this ask that you would get from the faculty member. And then the Google Docs will be made available after the workshop today, so people can see what other groups worked on or refer back to them if you hear a really great idea that you want to take home with you. And we'll have you share once we get back to the big group as well, just some of what your groups worked on. So I'm going to go ahead and push you guys into breakout rooms unless anybody has questions. And then sit tight for a second while I hop down the list and give everybody their different Google Doc link, okay? All right. Okay, I think we're all back from our breakout rooms. So hopefully you had a good time working with your groups. Playing around.
I feel like I'm going through the Harry Potter flu. When I go in and out, sorry.
I love it. I love it. Don't be sorry for comparing anything I'm involved in to Harry Potter. All right. So let's hear from our groups, what you guys talked about. I am going to ask that you share your scenario because each group was working on something different. So give everybody some context and then let us know what your group talked about, how you decided you would respond to getting this request from a faculty member.
I'm not sure where everything, I'm not sure it was just us contributing to our scenario because
okay.
There was like, we could see 7 people in the room and then we typed some stuff and then some more stuff was being typed and we were like, are you doing that? Are you doing that?
I bet I copied one link twice.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
We did half the work for some group. I don't know.
Okay. Well, what was your scenario that you and some other mystery group were working on?
Okay, so ours was a first-year seminar instructor wants you to give his students an introduction to the library, including a brief intro to how to find things in the databases and which ones would be most useful to their major. All of the students are biology or pre-med. You'll be in their regular classroom, which has an instructor station, computer projector. The instructor tells you that some of the students will likely bring laptops, but will not all have them probably. You have 20 minutes. So we also discovered that we weren't sure if this was a first-year seminar class that a faculty member was teaching or if this was a first year for a seminar and faculty member, like this is their first year.
We were the other mystery group and they're with you. We thought the same thing.
So what did you decide to go with?
We just decided to make something broad that would be applicable to all levels. And so it was, we decided to do a 1-minute library introduction, who we are, and then to do an icebreaker of some sort to introduce, as a way to introduce general library information. Some things that can be hands-on, a verbal interaction. One of the ones that Ashley's going to be using in our first year sessions will be this Mythbusters PowerPoint presentation where they get to engage verbally or they can vote, and it gives us a chance to introduce different aspects of the library but in a fun and engaging way. Another suggestion was also to do a sort of tutorial that they have to engage in, physically engage in. So that'd be 5 minutes. The next 5 minutes would be then a brief website and or subject course tour. So things that are going to be more relevant to them as biology people, that's 5 minutes. And then a specific tool to highlight within and demonstrate a specific database tool, another 5 minutes. And then this other group did a really good 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's you guys. Okay, so I'll let you guys talk about that. But that's as far as we got.
I think we were the third group in there. So if you saw somebody who was the Dumbo octopus, that was our group. So I don't know what we did, but so
Okay.
sorry if we like diverted where you guys were going, because I was just like typing away, and so yeah.
Us.
So yeah, we basically said the same thing. We had most of our discussion, and I also wanted to do some kind of icebreaker. So I'm glad that you actually, Michelle, I'm really glad you added that, because my group said no. So I was like, it appeared, and I was like, yay, wish has been granted. But then, yeah, we agreed with what you guys were saying. So like having the brief website or subject course guides, depending on which your library focuses on, and then Ona brought up the fact that because we know their major already, making sure that maybe even if we don't like do a full search in one of their unique databases, at least highlighting something that they might not be aware of within that type of database would be really important. And then we wanted to end with a 3, 2, 1 activity, which I'm really glad Ona was like, I don't know what that means, so that I was able to give steps. So basically usually we do this on like the physical board. So we give them sticky notes and then we let them go up and actually just like post their sticky notes. Because we're in the COVID world, we will not be doing that. So we were thinking, you know, we could do this over a whiteboard. So just have everybody kind of write things, or we could do it through poll everywhere. And it wouldn't have to be 3, 2, 1. It could just be 1, 1, 1. You know, it just kind of depends on how you want to do it. But we wanted to get like real-time feedback. And depending on how much time you have left, you can either answer those questions in real time, if people are pretty quick off the mark submitting them, or you can keep a tally of what those questions are, and then submit your answers through email or by, like posting something or embedding something that answered those questions in the course guide or subject guide. Group, was that sufficient? Did you have anything to add? Yeah, I'm getting, well, I'm not getting I'm getting a thumbs up, a mental thumbs up from Tracy, so thank you.
Okay. How about someone who had a different scenario? Who knows how many groups got each scenario? I have no idea now. This is going to be fun discovering what scenarios people actually got.
I think we were alone in our scenario, so I'll go ahead and share. I was working with Lisa and Amy, and I will read our scenario. An instructor for an online-only communications class that meets synchronously once a week asks you to talk to their students about finding and using images, video, or other media ethically in class projects. Students will be working on an informative website that will be public-facing and is intended to inform the public about controversial topics. You have 20 minutes to meet with them synchronously, but the instructor is open to providing homework before or after the session. And I just am now reading this, that it says homework before or after. We actually decided on homework before and after. So for this, our main thing is that we started talking about how we needed to clarify many things with the faculty. So first of all, having a conversation about especially having public-facing website talking to the students about controversial topics and how some of that might be triggering to some people. So making sure that you are warning the students and anyone who's going to be seeing your website about controversial topics. And then clarifying what they meant by ethically, using media ethically in their class. So those were two things that we really wanted to clarify with the faculty before we actually went in and started talking to the students. But we thought for the actual instruction that it would be a good idea to, first of all, have a pre-class assignment. So just some basic research or citation and research skills. And then when we go into the class, we would spend that 20 minutes introducing ourselves and making sure they knew how to contact the librarians and get stuff from the library, and then going through an actual walkthrough of a database and finding media on that database. So something like doing a search and then only having your results show images or video. And then for homework, we asked that students make a one-on-one virtual appointment with their librarian. Does that basically cover what we talked about, Lisa and Amy?
Yes, that sounds great.
Can you share your outline somehow?
Yes.
Michelle, the link is in the chat where you can
okay.
see their Google Doc.
Oh, there we go. I was about to do the same thing.
Yeah, I've been putting the Google Docs in the chat as each group talks, and then they will go out with the presentation materials after the workshop ends today.
Awesome.
Okay, so what other groups did we have?
Group 3, I had Liz and, oh, where's the name? I'm sorry. Marianne, there you are. And we had a scenario for an aviation instructor approaches you about problems with plagiarism in her upper level class. She asks if you can come to her class and present on finding articles, writing citations, and plagiarism. All students will be able to access a computer, and she said she can give you 20 minutes. And we just created a basic outline. Generally, we decided students would be following along on those computers with our search demo that we do later. So we would start with a quick introduction of ourselves and what we do, then do a basic search demonstration for focusing on articles, talking about the content type filter or whatever that's called for you guys, and a brief discussion on scholarly articles versus popular versus news, since we weren't sure what kind of articles they might need, and maybe teach them to determine which would be best based on their assignment. A quick overview of plagiarism. What is it? Maybe talk about the school's policy and how, you know, what are the negative effects if you are caught plagiarizing. Brief look at citations. What is it? Why do we cite? Show them how to generate a citation, whether from the database or your discovery platform. Since we are talking about articles, we would quickly show them an article citation template. And like a lot of times they don't even understand how to read a citation. So we would kind of show them what these parts mean and how they're generally built. Tell them about the style guides available. You can check out the MLA handbook for X time, whatever. Of course, plug your writing center if that's available at your institution, and how do they contact us, and pass out any handouts that we would have created. If my group would like to add anything, feel free.
No, good job, Ashley.
Okay, I think we have 2 more groups, or 2 more scenarios at least.
I can share for Marla and I. Marla, feel free to jump in.
Emrys, can you speak for us? I'm not totally competent on this.
What'd you say?
I'm asking Emrys if she could speak for our.
Oh, yeah, I will. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll go
I'm
next.
not fully in.
Yeah, we'll go out. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll go after Christina.
Okay. Here is ours. Okay, so our scenario is students in a general education government course are writing papers about proposing a change they would make to Supreme Court practices. The instructor wants you to show students how to find government information in the library and online. Students will also need to find popular sources. You'll be presenting in their regular classroom, and the instructor says you can have up to 20 minutes of class time, but is also open to assigning work before or after class. So the first thing we did for this was kind of define exactly what's our target here? What are we trying to accomplish? Because it's easy, as we found going through this, it's easy to be like, well, but we need to teach this and this and this. And so we defined our outcome and then we stuck to it. And so we decided to open with a way to hook students in was just to have a discussion with them about what they think the differences are between popular and government information sources. And then to build upon, and they might be like, oh, well, they're very different. One is, you know, depending on what they say, you build on that to help them see how they're similar and different, and, you know, maybe where you'd find them and things like that. And then we would demonstrate a keyword search. And this is one of the places where we're like, but we have to teach them how to do a keyword search. Nope, not part of our outcome right now. So we decided that that would be a good place that we would demonstrate finding these things and ask them to make it better. But along the way, we would be able to provide a resource before the class or after the class that would help them with keyword searching when they're doing this on their own time, so that they could reference it whenever they need it. And so then we decided that we were going to show them how to find the popular sources using general Google and library sources, then jump into government sources and show them how to do that, and to search with the site.gov. And then if we had extra time, that would be used to have students practice with their own searches for things that they're looking for, or even have some students demonstrate for the class what they would do, and have them, the fellow students, maybe add feedback or critique their search. And at the end, obviously, I added this in after the fact, after hearing everyone say the thing about contact information. We did forget that, but I added it, so we're good. A way that you can follow up with questions or comments. Marla, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was good.
But yes, the instructional designer in me wants to remind everybody to start with your outcome in mind.
Thank you, Christina. Emrys, did you want to go for the last group?
Sure, absolutely. So this is our document, and Jennifer and Tom, feel free to jump in with adding anything. But we had a scenario where we have students in a hybrid class, a lower level history course. They're going to be doing research projects involving investigating the history of our campus. The instructor wants them to use archival materials in addition to other resources. They need to learn how to find and use digitized collections from the archives. And they also prefer content that they can access on their own in the LMS, and also all of this within 30 minutes. So after we got over the shock of we only have 30 minutes to do this, y'all, we decided that if there is a campus archivist, which many of us do have often in our libraries, ask them about collaborating on the project with us. And then provide a video tour of the archives room, the history room, wherever this material is actually physically located, so that they can connect to seeing something rather than just a database on a screen. Also, if there are any interesting things on campus, because it did mention specific buildings or notable people, you know, like whether that's taking a video that shows little quirky things about the campus, etc. And then giving a brief video introduction on the types of materials, like it could be a recording of us just going over, like, this is, you know, like these are the different types of documents that you're going to be finding when you look in an archives, as opposed to when you're doing your typical library research for your English class. And then ending it with a link to like a LibWizard or a guide on the side instruction session where they have to go step by step. So they're actually on their computer following along and, you know, like, hey, let's try to find a photo of this founder of the university. And so, you know, like it's the whole click here, type in the box, you know, they go step by step and follow along and do it themselves. And then afterwards, LibWizard, guide on the side will both generate a certificate of completion that they can then email to their instructor. So as far as the learning outcomes, it's basically, you know, learn this in 30 minutes and then let your professor know that you did this activity. So the certificate is not graded. There's no, you got 13 out of 15 right, whatever. It's just that, hey, you did this thing. And then also letting them know that, hey, and as you are doing your actual research project in this class, we're available to help you. So this is how you contact us.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everyone for working in the groups and coming up with some really great ideas. I'm just going to give everybody a last couple of minutes if anybody has any final questions or comments that they want to pose to the group or to an individual before we wrap up for the day. I do want to give you a platform to do that. I know, Ona, you had a question earlier. I'm not sure if you're still here. Do you want to throw that out there?
And I absolutely say this now from the get-go that this is not entirely related to this topic, but I am with a group of library instruction librarians, and so I would love to have an opinion. I'm about to do a presentation on Tuesday for our nursing, it's a new student nursing orientation. And I've done this many times. They've always wanted me to cover the difference between popular and peer reviewed. I have a thing I do with that. I am just asking what your thoughts are on this with regard to peer-reviewed material about COVID, simply because in my observation, there's a lot of articles published very quickly, unusually quickly, in the peer-reviewed journals, and I understand why. We're in the middle of a pandemic. They need to get the information out. It is still peer reviewed, but it's coming out really fast. I mean, my thought is that one ought to say that this is a very unique time and that some of that information may get superseded as other research presents itself. What do you all think? How would you all approach that?
I have comments on that, Ona. I mean, I think one of the things that's great about seeing all the stuff with COVID right now is that we're seeing science happening.
Yeah.
It's happening in our news. And I don't think that we can, especially when we're talking to college students, we can't just pretend that that's not there. And so addressing it seems like the best way to do it. But yeah, I mean, that's how science happens. And pointing that out, I think, is the best way to say.
That's a good point, yeah.
We have research, and the research showed this at one point, and then we keep doing research because
and then, yeah, and it's just happening a lot faster now. That's true. I just thought it would be useful to let them know that it is possible a study may come out that really might get superseded pretty quickly by something else. It's a very unusual time, and I just that's kind of how I was thinking about it. I just wondered what the collective library instruction brain thought about that. So, all right.
Oh no, I just put in a link to a blog post in the chat that we did. It was about evaluating medical research in general. And one of the articles in that example was a pre-pub article. So it had a disclaimer that it had not been peer reviewed. And I included a reflection question on that of, does that change how you use the information in this article that since you know it is not peer reviewed?
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's exactly how you described it. That's how I would address that specific question.
Okay, yeah, I just thought there might be a need. I would normally not talk about this, but I think in this very particular state-of-the-art climate, it was sort of necessary to talk about the fact that I'm talking to nurses and there's a pandemic going on. So, all righty. All right, well, thank you all. I appreciate you letting me segue.
I also posted our, if you're not on Facebook at COIL, I've also posted how you can find us on Facebook. So I don't know if you kind of got this thing through a listserv or what, but anyway, so if anybody doesn't know that we have a Facebook page, I posted that up there in the chat.
Okay, any other questions or things people would like to share before I do the leading us out? Okay, so I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. This has been definitely an adventure in virtual workshopping. So I'm happy that we got to see each other still and work together, even though we couldn't get into the same space and visit with each other face to face. I'd like to extend a special thank you to the planning team for today. That includes Tracy Ashby, Ashley Bean, and Lisa Grimes, who are also our COIL officers for this year. Thank you for all of the work that you put in designing the presentations and putting together everything, making this workshop a success. And then also thank you to our lightning presenters for sharing their experiences today. As I mentioned before, all of the presentation materials, including materials from our lightning presenters, the group Google Docs that you worked in this afternoon, and anything that the COIL officers put together, will be available on the COIL blog on our website. And I will also send that out in an email to everyone that registered. So you'll be getting that from me as well. And I'll probably post it to the COIL listserv as well, because I imagine there's people who may be interested that didn't get a chance to come today. The recording for this will also be made available. So if you want to go back and look at it, once I figure out how to export it and do all the fancy stuff that has to happen when you record these things. So just watch for those materials to be coming out. I'm going to post a link to our workshop evaluation in the chat. I'll send that with the email too, but if you have a few minutes to fill out that evaluation and let us know your thoughts on how things went today, especially since it was our first time going virtual, and if we have to do this again in the future, we'd really love feedback on what you guys thought worked really well, or what you think we could have done better, or areas where maybe something else would have been a better option than the way that it went today. So yeah, I'll send that out again in the email, but it's in the chat if you want to go access it now. And then the final thing today is I just want to put in a little plug for our OK ACRL 2020 conference, which will be happening on November 13th. It's going to be completely online this year, and it's going to be free registration, so there's no charge for that. The theme is going to be 2020 Vision, looking at our profession through a DEI lens. And a call for proposals for presentations for that will be going out early next week, so you can watch your email for that as well. But that's all we have for you today. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. I'll leave the Zoom room open for a little bit. I'll stop the recording, so if you want to hang out or chat with someone before you head out for the day, please do. But I appreciate everybody coming and participating today. It was great to see you all and hear from you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.